welcome to this January 19th edition of the Courier Paperboyz. I'm sports editor Doug Newhoff, and I'm joined this morning by the best sports staff in the state of Iowa, Jim Sullivan, Jim Nelson, and Nick Pateros. I was thinking about this the other day, guys, and there isn't much this group hasn't seen in the world of sports. I'm in my 40th year at the Courier. Sully, you've got to be
32 years, 33 years.
And about 40 years in the business.
Yeah.
Nellie, I'm guessing you're in the 25-year, 30-year range?
30 years, if you
30
count
years.
my first year as a high school senior, this is my 30th year. In July, I'll be 30 years with the Courier.
Nick, about 10 years now?
Yeah, well, 10 in the business, probably 7 here, so, yeah.
So that's like 125 years of experience in the world of sports. We ought to know a thing or two by now.
Yeah.
But you know what? It seems like as much as you think you've seen everything, something new always comes up, and you just kind of shake your head. And you know, just thinking back this week about some of the stories I've seen, you know, we get a basketball player at Oregon State who's mad because of a foul that wasn't called, so he sticks his foot out and trips a referee. We have a pair of girls' high school teams. I can't remember if they were in Ohio or Indiana, but they have a brawl after the game, so both of those teams get their seasons suspended as a punishment. Then we have a basketball player from Monmouth, and there's a little scuffle in the post game when they're shaking hands. He decides to slap somebody in the face. So, I mean, just crazy things just continue to happen, and you just never know what's coming next in this world. I guess that's why it's so fascinating and why we stuck with it so long. Speaking of that, I guess one of the unique things that happened last night, Iowa State beats Oklahoma when they're ranked #1, so now all three of our big college basketball teams have defeated a #1 team this season. I don't know that that has ever happened before, or here or anywhere else for that matter, but a pretty big win for Iowa State.
No question, what a great ball game it was. I don't know if you can call the Big 12 the best conference in the country. There are probably some others that would argue with that, but it's hard to argue with the caliber of basketball that's played on a given night. I mean, remember the Kansas OU game from a couple weeks ago was, I think, triple overtime. This one easily could have gone to overtime. It did not, thanks in part to some another clutch basket by Monte Morris, a pretty heady call by Steve Prohm at the end on an out-of-bounds play, and some good free throw shooting. And for a fourth factor, some improved defense by Iowa State, something that we didn't know they could do up until the last couple of weeks. So just a tremendous ball game, great shooting on both sides, some clutch play, and you know, Iowa State's got a ways to go. I think they're 3-3 in conference now, but certainly things are looking a lot better for them now than they did, let's say, after the Baylor game a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that was the first time I had a chance to see Buddy Hield play, and he's like the Steph Curry of college basketball. That was impressive, the shots he was making. And if you would have told me Oklahoma was going to shoot like they did from three-point range, I would have thought Iowa State wouldn't have had a chance in that game. So it was just an impressive basketball by the Cyclones, and George Niang really kind of showing off his skill set as that type of a point forward there, and he just made a lot of great plays throughout that game to keep the team in it.
You go back to that play that got the technical. My wife and I were sitting watching the game. We were wondering if Matt Thomas actually got out of bounds first.
Yeah.
That was really close, because I think he only had 1 foot down, so I guess he'd be considered out of bounds at that point when he caught that ball, because that second foot came down after he caught the ball, I think.
It was touch and go. I mean, the Oklahoma guy too, I mean, he stuck his arm out to try and knock the pass down.
Yeah.
At about the same time he went across the line, so
Yeah.
borderline technical foul, but either way, I mean, it was a good
Yeah.
play by Iowa State, and
Exactly.
certainly caught Oklahoma off guard. I was, you know, surprised too that Oklahoma was that close with Ryan Spangler only getting 1 basket. I mean, that's not characteristic of them, but still a great basketball game. I do wonder, does Iowa State have enough depth, you know, to make an extended run at a Big 12 championship or a Sweet 16? You know, on a one-game basis, they play with so much energy, and they're so talented they can beat anybody. But to do that over and over and over again when you play in a league like the Big 12 is tough.
I think that's a fair question, and although they were trying to make the case on ESPN last night that these guys are in such good physical condition that they can get away with it, all well and good. If you remember back to Larry Eustachy's best team at Iowa State with Marcus Fizer and Jamal Tinsley, they basically played 7 guys, and I remember them going into a second half of the game where he basically fired his bench and didn't play them at all in the second half.
That's right.
It can be done, but if anybody gets hurt, and we all saw last night what McKay was dealing with, if anybody gets hurt, it's going to be trouble.
You wonder if they can't get 2 or 3 minutes from some guy on their bench. I mean, I don't even know, they only have about 10 guys dressed, it looks like, or healthy bodies dressed, so maybe they can't. Maybe they can't rely on the number 8 guy to come in and give them 2 minutes a half or whatever.
Even if they get a solid 7, I mean, I think that's enough, nowadays in college basketball, but their 6 and 7 are a little shaky, if you ask
Yeah.
me.
Burton's okay, I think he's made a contribution, but Hallis Cook has not played in a couple of games. Now, he was basically a non-factor when he was playing, and now they've got a walk-on, Ashton Jordan, is that the name?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Who was pretty good, I guess, the other day against, when they won a game over the weekend with the Kansas State. Didn't really do much except maybe give the starters a rest the other night, but, maybe that's all they need.
If they end up having one regret this season, I think it'll be that they didn't take 2 or 3 of those guys a little further down the bench and get them into some meaningful games early in the season and get them some experience. But let's talk about the Hawkeyes a little bit. Up to number 9 this week in the Associated Press top 25. They're just playing really, really well. Jared Uthoff's put himself in a position to be a candidate for Big Ten Player of the Year. Giselle is playing at an all Big Ten level. And the other 3 starters, Anthony Clemens, Peter Jock, and Woodbury, are, I think, playing the best basketball of their careers. What do you guys think? I mean, this team is really, really good.
I think they're, you speak of the pieces, but I tell you, they're playing well as a team, and they're getting contributions from, when we talk about lack of depth for Iowa State, you're looking at the depth, they bring in Dom Ewell and Ahmad Wagner and
Bear, the walk-on.
Nicholas Bear, the walk-on they got in, and there's another guy I'm missing there. And then, Peter Jock, too, and then you talk about that, Peter Jock has lifted his game to...
Brady Ellingson is the other
Yeah,
guy that
Brady
they're
Ellingson.
using a lot. And their supporting cast is so good that, those guys have a little more freedom, I think, and a little more chance to grow.
Mhm, exactly, so it's amazing how they're playing a team, and the way they're just beating teams, that Michigan State game was really over.
On the road.
On the
Yeah.
road in the first half, it was like
Yeah.
8 minutes in, and Iowa was up by 10. I don't want to say it wasn't over, but Iowa was pretty much feeling comfortable at up 10 early.
To go on the road and do what they've done in the Big Ten is really impressive. Their comeback against Purdue, that's where you first started to recognize, okay, they have something here. And then what they did against Michigan State to sweep them in a game you knew Michigan State wanted, you can't say enough about what this team's done to date.
It seems like they have a lot of versatility to go along with the depth. They've played effectively some zone, I believe. They've used the press at times effectively. Maybe a much better defensive teams than some that McCaffrey's had in the past, especially early on in his time there. I'm not sure that anybody saw this coming when they lost to Augustana in an exhibition game, granted, but they didn't look good. And it's kind of ironic, in a way, they're sort of, it can be viewed in the same way the football team was viewed. I don't think anyone saw them playing this well. Obviously, the strength of schedule is not an argument here as it was in the football season, but still, no one saw this happening, where they'd be this good, this fast, and let's see how far they run with it.
Yeah, they're certainly riding a wave of momentum now, and they think that they can't be beat, and a lot of times that's, like Yogi Berra used to say, 90% of the game is half mental, and they got it rolling. On the other hand, we got a team that doesn't have it rolling up in Cedar Falls. The Panthers are just struggling. I mean, how can a team that beats number 1 North Carolina, beats Iowa State when they're in the top 5, how can they turn around and lose to the last place team in the Missouri Valley Conference and only score 41 points or whatever it was?
I don't know how, but they did. I think actually a couple of things are going on. And we've talked a little bit about this in the past. Teams have adjusted pretty well to what Washburn does. They've tried some things to free him up, move him from the center of the court where he gets the high post ball screen to the side. Did that a little bit against Drake, and they seem to get away with that a little bit against Loyola. But some of it, I mean, Paul Jesperson's just not shooting well. Jake touched on this, I think, in his Monday press conference. He's fighting it, whereas he was 7 for 7 against Iowa State, just put the ball up with a beautiful stroke. That's not there now, falling away. He's chipping the rim. He's not even hitting layups now, and that's just a slump. Bohannon's been up and down. And the third part of that is they don't get consistent production out of their inside people. Much has been made, and Jake touched on this Monday as well, that Bennett Cook is shooting 70% from the field. That's nice, but he ran a total of 2 shots against Loyola. Why? Because he wasn't on the floor very much in the second half because he had foul trouble. And Clint Carlson's ailing a little bit, and Ted Freeman just doesn't have the hands to be consistently effective offensively. So there's all these issues that have come to a head at the same time. I think some of them can be solved. I think they can do some things to get Washburn free. Jesperson's not going to shoot this poorly all year, you wouldn't think. And I think that Bennett Cook will get better with time. But, here they are, 6 games in the conference season, and they're in the bottom 4 of the league. they can maybe move up a notch or two, but they have to start pretty soon, and kind of a rough way to start with a Wichita State coming into your building.
Well, why not bring in the best to bring out your best?
Exactly. Well, that seems to work for them, so why not? I mean, the way things have gone this season, it would make perfect sense for them to rise up and beat Wichita.
It
Not that I
will.
think it could happen, but, or will happen, but it certainly could.
The other interesting thing is that when they don't shoot well, especially Bohannon and Jesperson, when they don't make their threes, you know, you drop your head just for a second, you're a step late getting back on defense, and all of a sudden the other team is scoring a transition three. And they've had those stretches of 3 or 4 or 5 minutes in the games that I've been able to watch where they haven't scored, and they've gotten beat for a few buckets in transition, and all of a sudden you go from being even or even up a little bit, you're down by 10. And they just haven't recovered from those little brief lapses.
Yeah, and the other teams, their credit seems to find the hot hand.
They do.
The Richardson kid for Loyola threw in a shot that was frankly flat lucky, that got him the lead for good, but it went in, and he took a good shot at the shot clock. Later, he hit another big three that built the lead to 6. Indiana State did much of the same thing. They found some guys that heated up in the second half. You know, Southern Illinois had Anthony Bean, and they knew enough to give him the ball when he was hot. And so it goes. UNI hasn't been able to find that now in the conference season, actually probably since the Iowa State game, where they found 1 or 2 guys that have gotten hot. And we all know what the results have been.
Let's talk a little bit about the Panther women's team. 5-1, they've got a piece of the Missouri Valley Conference lead now. I think everybody thought they'd be a pretty decent defensive team with the experience that they've got and kind of Tanya's coaching philosophy. And they're starting to get enough points to make that happen, but they're finding different ways to win, and I think that's important if you want to contend for a championship.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, like you mentioned, their defense has just been outstanding this season. They lead the Valley in points allowed defense there. I think they're only giving up now under 60 a game to conference teams. So they've been really solid there. Their game Sunday was honestly very ugly. I think they were 2 of 20 on 2-point shots in the first half, scored 20 points in the first half, and yet they still find a way to win that game. A part of it is, in that league, there's not a lot of really good scoring teams. That Indiana State team they're playing was missing 2 of its top 4 scorers, and so they only made 6 field goals in the second half, and that allowed UNI to come back and get into it. The matchup that'll be real interesting is this weekend. They head over to Drake. Drake leads the Valley in scoring offense, so you're going to have the best offense in the league against the best defense, and both teams are tied for first place atop the standings at 5-1, so it'll be interesting to see who wins out in that matchup.
It will. Drake's got Lizzie Wendell, who's, I think, that leads the league in scoring, and a number of other people who can light it up too. So yeah, that'll be good, and really a good gauge of where UNI is and whether they can sustain this run and compete for this championship. So that'll be fun. Let's talk a little bit about the NFL playoffs. We're down to the conference championships. I don't think it's any big surprise that the top 4 seeds are the 4 that are still remaining. New England plays Denver, and Carolina plays
Arizona. Carolina.
There we go. So yeah, we've got some good matchups this weekend. One thing that's kind of stands out to me is Carolina has a quarterback who's mobile and nobody else does.
Really, yeah, that's exactly right. And Cam Newton played very well in his playoff game, whereas Carson Palmer, mobile or immobile, did not. And he was fairly fortunate to get out of there with a victory, considering he threw a couple picks. The touchdown pass he threw was deflected, and there was some blatant offensive interference by on that play by the Cardinals. So you have to favor Carolina. And then on the other half, of course, we have the Manning versus Brady 49 or whatever it is now, and you know, that's something that the league is excited about, and a lot of the other national media is excited about. The rest of us just have to live with it, and you know, we'll see who wins this one, and we're looking at the distinct possibility of another Bill Belichick Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think this is the 4th meeting between Manning and Brady in the
In the playoffs, 17th overall, I think.
And the 4th in the championship game, which I think is the most ever between 2 same quarterbacks on the same team, or not same teams, but Manning won the first 2, I think, and Brady won the last one.
Something like that, yeah. But, you know, this is, the thing that I think will be here is that this is the last chance. Well, we've heard that before, but certainly Manning can't have more than maybe this year, maybe one more after that. Who knows with Brady, but it'll be intriguing, but it will be a lot more than just those 2. I mean, Denver has got to be able to run the ball. The receivers, for a change, have to be able to hold on to it. That would help the Broncos a lot. And New England is getting healthy at precisely the right time. So, you know, we'll see what happens.
I think a lot of it will come down to who can get some pressure on those veteran quarterbacks that aren't so mobile. You know, if you rush Brady a little bit, I mean, that disrupts New England's rhythm in their offense significantly. And I have yet to see anybody put a good lick on Peyton Manning. I mean, he stands back there clean for most of the game, so he doesn't have to operate under any pressure. Ditto for Cam Newton. I mean, he never gets touched back there. They must have the best offensive line in football. And Carson Palmer, you know, he does get a little pressure here and there, and he's got enough weapons, I guess, with Larry Fitzgerald and some of those other guys, David Johnson from Northern Iowa, that he gets the ball out of there, and they still make it happen. But I think the team that is able to get a lot of pressure on the quarterback or some pressure and make a few big plays on defense has an advantage here.
I think in the Arizona, Carolina game, another big key will be Fitzgerald. David Johnson, of course, is important, but Fitzgerald, if anyone doubted his Hall of Fame credentials before, I don't think they will anymore after that performance against Green Bay. He seems to play his best at the biggest moments. If you remember back to the time they were in the Super Bowl with Kurt Warner, just a tremendous talent near the end of his career, but as I said, he looks like a youngster whenever there's something on the line.
That overtime catch, you could see he had a little extra afterburner there, that he really took off and got him down to that 5-yard line. What a great broken play that was.
What an unbelievable game. I mean,
Yeah,
for
it was.
the plays the Packers made at the end of the game to extend it, and then for all of that, the first play of overtime, Carolina rips that one off. Incredible.
I thought that little pitch play to him and for the touchdown too was a great play call there.
It
I
was.
don't think anyone saw that coming.
Nobody, yeah.
Nick, what's going on in the world of high school sports?
Well, one thing that's kind of interesting is Jessup boys basketball team just keeps finding ways to win. They had a big win over Appleton Parkersburg last week. They beat Dyke New Hartford Dyke New Hartford gave them their only loss in the season. So you've got Dyke that's undefeated, but Jessup just has one loss, and they've really asserted themselves as now contenders in 1A. And it's kind of interesting because they lost one of their best players to an injury at the beginning of the year, and you don't think of a lot of 1A teams with a lot of depth, and they've found ways to win. So that's one of the things that's really kind of stood out locally, I thought, is what that group's been able to do.
A lot of good teams playing at a high level, so the postseason should be interesting for Northeast Iowa. Okay, well, that's going to wrap it up for today. You can keep up with all the sports action at WCFcourier.com or in our print editions, and we will be back next week.